and this is in the gallery. Good to see you here again today. We'll start with the acknowledgement of country. Is there anyone? Councillor Mill.
On behalf of Gympie Regional Council, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land which we're meeting on today, being the Kabi people. I'd also like to extend that acknowledgement to the Waka Waka people of the West and the Budgera people of the coastal strip. I'd recognise their continuing connection to land, sea and sky, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and I extend those respects to any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with us today in the room and online, and their elders past, present and emerging.
Thank you. I'll now hand over to Pastor Nathan Burns from the Wesleyan Methodist Church, who is standing in for Gary McNichol today, to say a few words and then lead us in prayer. Thank you.
A reading from 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 1 to 6. I urge then, first of all, that petitions, prayers, intercession and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings and all those in authority, that we may live peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. This is good and pleases God our Saviour, who wants all people to be saved and come to a knowledge of the truth. For there is one God and one mediator between God and mankind, the man Jesus Christ, who gave himself as a ransom for all people. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and your provision to us. Father, I pray first for the people of Gympie. Thank you for Gympie and the people who call this place their home and their community. I pray that your love and truth will be made abundantly known to the people of Gympie, so that we could all live together in a state of harmony and mutual respect. I pray for the businesses of Gympie. I pray for employers and employees. I pray that a culture of honesty, hard work, fair conditions, good products and excellent customer service would be a standard for businesses operating in Gympie. I pray that such a standard would cause these businesses and those who utilise the services of these businesses to thrive. I pray for the councillors of Gympie. I pray that you would bless them with a sharpened and honest minds today. Guide them as they seek you to serve the community to the best of their abilities, focused on seeking the best for all in this region of Gympie. I pray also for other leaders here in the community, people who have positions of influence in the lives of others. May these leaders look to serve others before serving themselves, looking for the betterment of those who look unto them for guidance and wisdom. And finally, Father, I pray for those in the community who are grieving for loved ones who are sick or have passed away recently. May your peace and hope rest upon them in their hard times. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
We'll just have 1 minute silence to remember and reflect on those who have recently passed away in our region. Thank you. Any disclosures of interest, councillors? No? Great, awesome. Any leave of absence? Councillor Stewart has a leave of absence there for the meeting covering the dates the 7th to the 14th of October. We have a recommendation there before us, councillors, in relation to granting Councillor Stewart a leave of absence. Is there someone to move? Councillor Milne, someone to second? Councillor Warlock? All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Confirmation of minutes. A recommendation there. Move Councillor Smerdon. Second. Councillor Stewart. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. No petitions before us. We have our first item 6.1, Corporate Services Directorate update. Hand over to Mr. Lewis.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, councillors. This report presents a summary of the activities of the Corporate Services Directorate for the quarter ending August 2023. I would just like to go through the report and just highlight some key aspects of the deliverables that have been achieved in the quarter, and then happy to take any questions. As you would be aware, Council adopted its annual budget on the 25th of July, and we're now starting to do our analysis on the carry forward projects from the 22-23 financial year, and that will be hopefully presented to Council in September. The first rates calculation was processed on the 27th of July, and rates were subsequently issued and continued to be issued on the 4th of August. As previously advised to Council, we've now undertaken a strategic review of our procurement processes in anticipation of the rollout of the technology on the modules, and hopefully we'll get some streamlined processes through that review. Also previously mentioned to Council is the consultants continue to work on the review of our fleet operations, and that review is intended that the review will provide recommendations for the appropriate makeup of our fleet, including ownership models and various allowances for contract provisions. The review will also see the development of an asset management plan for both plant and fleet, and look at reviewing our internal plant hire rates, which should have a corresponding beneficial impact on our operating result. The 2022-23 financial statements continue to progress as planned, and we're hoping to meet all of our legislative timeframes. I'd also like to bring to Council's attention the Local Government 2022 financial report to the Queensland Parliament from the Auditor General. There's some salient points there that we probably fall into some of those categories where financial statements that continue to be produced and audited, they're reliable, but fewer councils are achieving legislative timelines. Councils are taking too long to resolve some high-risk issues, and grant funding received in advance is masking an overall decline in the sector's financial sustainability. And I know the two relevant councils that sit on the Audit Risk Management Committee are aware of some of those issues that have been discussed. There's a lot happening in the ICT world. We've just completed in the 22-23 year, we've embarked on cyber security strategy, which again has been identified through the Audit Risk Management Committee, and that has significantly reduced our cyber security exposure. We've also developed an incident response plan, which will help us. We are subject to any attacks. Council's also implemented a new printer plan, PLAAS, for want of a better word, for it's replacing our printer management and services contract, and that was rolled out from the start of the June. We've also completed phase 1B and 1A of the CCTV project, and we're now looking at phase 1C, which will identify more of our community-based assets, where we'll be coming back to Council in a budget review seeking further funds to complete those works. As part of our improvement processes, we've also all of our meeting rooms across Council, and we've also undertaken a review of the meeting processes for this room, and we'll be bringing those recommendations back to a Council workshop for further review. BYOD continues to be a success with 173 users signing up for the program, and that's a critical body of work because it allows us to use people's own mobile devices to support our online platforms. So that'll be critical as Technology One is released into the field, so people will be able to use their phones to access council platforms. In relation to GRIT, more positive good news. Release 1A, which includes the financial general ledger and the bank reconciliations, is now live, and that builds upon EFT Sure and ProMaster. So we're now looking at how we bring in the balance of the financial suite, as well as the property and rating, which is about to commence alongside HR and payroll. In relation to people and organisation development, we've just completed a draft 4-year Gympie Council workforce strategy. So that will be presented to the executive leadership in September, and then subsequent to that, we're hoping it will come back to council in October, to an October workshop. At the 31st of July, council's headcount was 529 FTEs. I note there was a question to the CEO in relation to frontline versus back of house numbers. We're currently deriving those numbers, and we'll present them in a communication to all councillors post the meeting. Recruitment has also been a great success. One of the recommendations of the staff engagement survey was that we were taking too long to recruit. So we set up a specialised recruitment team being made up of 2, and we're getting positive turnaround, and including feedback from potential applicants. We've also managed to recruit to 21 vacancies in the period June to August. The group, or the unit, also is looking at improving our policies and procedures, and they're noted on. So those policies include corporate volunteering, a casual day for charity, flexible work, human resource delegations, management of disciplinary matters, and grievance and employee complaints. And a lot of those issues were also raised during the staff survey. So again, we're hoping that that will start to provide benefits in the next round of the survey, which is due to commence in August. Performance appraisals was another issue which was strongly raised during the staff survey. So we've now undertaken or completed 77% of our employee appraisals, noting that 9% of outstanding related to casuals, and another 14% are earmarked for completion. So that's another milestone for the organisation, where it's been years since most of our workforce have had staff appraisals undertaken. So again, issue raised in the staff survey that we've addressed. Just another issue was the Staff Excellence Awards Night was held on the 11th of August. Approximately 300 staff and partners attended, and there's been some really positive feedback from both recipients of awards and those attending the event, which will go a long way to improving our overall culture within council. Moving on to the Communications Business and Engagement branch, the team continues to provide support across the organisation to internal clients, but also supporting various other events within the region, and a notable example being the Mary Street event and Rally Queensland, which reached, with social media reaching over 550,000 accounts. I would also note that there's an attachment to the report which gives a profile of the outcomes of the 2023 event summary for that event. Also, finally, in relation to that section, we're continuing to work with the University of the Sunshine Coast on our partnership agreement, which will give us further benefits in how we engage across the organisation, but also how we support our community through scholarships and bursaries to local students. So that'll be another great outcome for our local community. Finally, in relation to governance, integrity and risk, there was a recent minor restructure where that unit now reports to the Corporate Services Directorate, and that was to give it alignment with the concept of corporate services being there to support the balance of the organisation. The operational plan was adopted on the also on the 26th of July, and that we would now start to progressively report on the implementation of that program throughout the financial year. The group is also reviewing a number of key policies, including acceptable request guidelines for council requests. So we're hoping to bring that back to a workshop either in late September or early October. We've also received funding from the Local Government Managers Association of Australia, which is looking at a governance reset program, and we're hoping to commence that program in Q1 this year, and that will hopefully lead to significant improvements in our governance processes across the organisation. Also, we've now completed our business continuity plan for council, and that is now in place. We've also reviewed the local disaster management plan, and that was presented on the 5th of July to our agency partners for review, and then it will be presented for council for adoption. And finally, I'd like to bring to council's attention, I know it's a bit ironic, but we're having a family fun day for disaster management preparedness, and that is proposed for the 14th of October. So I would encourage all councillors, family members, staff members and the community to attend that day to allow communities to be aware of their requirements in relation to disasters, but to do that in a fairly supportive and fun environment. Happy to take any questions.
Questions, councillors? Councillor Devereux.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank you for going through the report like that. I'm not sure if you're instructed to or not, but I really enjoyed the fact that you did it. I think it's great for the public to be able to sit there and listen to it and get an understanding of what's in it rather than just, as read. So thank you very much for that. My first question has to do with, actually, I'm going to start over here, with the cameras. Now, we have talked about the CCTV cameras before, and the one I brought up was the Nash Street car park, because we got issues with people throwing trolleys up off it, being very loud, getting drunk there and so forth. It's not in this list. I know it was mentioned as going to be considered further down the track.
Yeah, we could, through you, Mr Mayor, we could include that in phase 1C.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Now, my next one is to do with the cameras as well. Given that we've had a lot of expenses increase around services and products and so forth, has there been a blowout with the cost of that, or is it still right under the contract?
No, I believe it's in line with the contract that we let.
That's awesome. My final question to do with the CCTV cameras, and you will be pleased to know, councillors, most of my questions are in this first session. You won't be pleased, but most of my questions are in this first one. When it comes to the police stations, I see now we've got Gympie Police, Imbil Police as mentioned, we're looking at Tinkham Bay Police, Rainbow Beach Police Station, and the reason given was to allow monitoring of local CCTV assets at the police stations. So I assumed that all the cameras would come back to the Gympie Police Station. You're saying that in those areas they go back to those police stations?
That's my understanding, Councillor.
Okay.
And we have a memorandum of understanding with what the police's obligations are in relation to that data that they can seek to review.
So my concern is that increases the cost to the project, in that we've got to have what does it cost for the CCTV? You probably don't know offhand, but what does it cost for that bit that goes into the police stations?
I'd have to take that question on notice and provide that to all councillors.
Because what I'm thinking is, but that's times 4 instead of just the 1.
It was, through you, Mr Mayor, it was incorporated into the original contract. And when we were developing the specifications, we worked closely with QPS to develop their requirements. And I guess it's part of we don't have officers actively monitoring the images we're capturing, whereas the police can look at that as a prevention measure. So we thought the benefits outweighed the cost in the fact that they could address and react in a timely manner to incidences as they may have been occurring.
And I understand that they have, in fact, done exactly that, even though they make it very clear they don't monitor them.
So I can take that question on notice and provide that back to all councillors.
No, I think you've answered it. I'm quite happy with that answer. Thank you. Does anyone else have a question before I go on?
Just in relation to that, just out of what you just said, so the other police stations are not staffed full time, only Gympie is, so do the feeds to Rainbow Beach also say go to Gympie, so that's going to be possibly monitored midnight on Saturday or
Sure.
yeah.
Do you have a question, councillor?
Oh, not related to that.
That's okay, I'm done with
Other
that.
ones. Right?
I'm done with that, so.
Oh, okay, a couple of quick. The Fun Day with Disaster, is that a one-off, or is that going to become a regular thing, sort of getting ready for the season?
It's typically part of our Get Ready program.
Yep.
So it's typically held towards the start of the storm season.
Yeah.
So I would anticipate now that we've done, this will be one, we will continue to operate in that space.
Yep. Okay. The staff survey, does that get published further afield than just staff at some point?
Yes, so what we did last year, we published the results of the staff survey to the organisation. We also published it to the local media,
Yep.
and we gave it to all councillors as well. It was published for all to see.
Yep. Okay. And final one, just because you're the finance man, I noticed that staffing, other than the other question we had, so very vague memory, and don't take it the wrong way, but we were around 500 when we started, and there was some hypothetical list running around of 100 people that could have been culled, but be that as may, it's gone 100 people the other way. So, and I see that in the finances, I think you've allowed 2.3 million savings in wages we don't have to pay if we had a full,
That's right.
that's the way I read it?
Through the, I think, and I'm just quoting off memory now, so I
Yeah.
may be out by a little bit. I believe our establishment at the end of May 2022 was 536.
Yeah. Oh, it's got 529 here.
So that's the actual number of people on seats
Oh,
at the
yep,
moment.
yep.
And in the formation of the budget, there is an efficiency, what we call efficiency dividend.
Yep.
And that is that $2 million or thereabouts you're talking about. So that assumes that as positions become vacant, that they're held vacant for at least 8 weeks to give us that dividend. And that 8 weeks assumes, and that really, it's not a real impost on the organisation. It just means that we want a position to be, or the officer to leave the organisation and then start the recruitment process, which would then typically take around 8 weeks.
So the 2 million of saving over 8 weeks is over the year that was never filled.
No, so the 2 weeks assumes that we have an ongoing
Yep.
churn within the organisation,
Yep.
and that any of that churn, those positions remain vacant for up to 8 weeks.
Right, yeah. I suppose I was just sort of concerned about the fact is if you're 2 million short in wages, which, you know, it's a saving, but if they were here, they generally cost, you could double that. So another 2 million of consumption that they cost the
If we didn't,
activity, but that's a lot on the bottom line of the budget.
if we don't get the turnover that we expect,
Yeah.
then we could have a budget issue that we need to address.
Yeah, I know. I'm just thinking at the expense of what? Sort of, you know, you can't have people sitting down doing nothing. They've got to create, do stuff. So something's got to give.
That's right.
Mhm.
Hopefully we get increased revenue stream to offset.
Unless they're coming from out of town and building new properties.
Councillor Devereux, I believe you have a few more.
Thank you very much.
I'm done.
You're done? Wonderful. Just quickly, I'll head to the print imaging service and the contract. It says there were 15 standalone devices purchased for low volume. I've still got one of the old ones at home, which actually puts lines across pages and everything. Councillors get a printer. Has that been taken into account?
It possibly hasn't, but we can look at replacing that for you.
Thank you. And the ink cartridges, are they more reasonable than the ones on the existing?
I'm not sure about that.
Because that was a shocker. All right. Council meeting rooms is my next area. So it says here that the new fit out would be Microsoft Meeting Room technology. And that we've received designs for an upgrade. So I was a little surprised that as the primary users, we weren't involved. Have we looked at like the screen there? We struggle to read what's on it because we're down this end, it's a long way and so forth. Can you just walk us through what some of the features are?
Through Mr Mayor, we've upgraded most of our meeting rooms within council. So that's using Microsoft technology, which allows better Teams meetings throughout the organisation, as well as with external parties. In relation to this meeting room, we asked for what could be done technically. So then the view is we want to bring that back to a council workshop.
I think it's in the report, Mr Lewis. A presentation will be made to key stakeholders, including councillors, before any works are commenced.
Yeah, I'm just surprised it wasn't done before we went out to get the information.
They would like to come back to us with what options are there. Because I'm not, and I think most councillors would be in the same boat where we don't really understand the camera audio technology, and having information that we can actually discuss will probably help the conversation.
I understand it's forever.
Part of the issue, or part of the brief, was to understand what the heritage requirements were for the building as well. So what we couldn't do. So then it's about, this is what we can do, bring it back to a workshop to say, well, this is what we can do, what would you like to see? And then we get on and do it.
So my main thing is the consideration so that we can see what's on the screen. Is that something that's been looked at?
Yes, one of the concepts I've seen is for 2 large screen TVs to be put up here that work in conjunction with each other, so you'll be able to read it from any part of the room.
Okay, thank you.
But through Mr Mayor, the technology doesn't come cheaper.
Yeah, but I'd rather, we need to be able to see what's on the screen. If it's important enough to be up there, we should be able to read it. So what about screens?
Probably the issue in relation to visibility, like the reports for meetings are very easy to read. I have no problem seeing it with this end. It all depends on the document and the compressed nature of the document. So if it's maps and those sorts of things that are highly compressed, or tables that are compressed, then that's a problem. So to save on expense, we probably could consider format.
Opera glasses.
Sorry?
Opera glasses.
You could think of opera glasses, Councillor Spurgeon, but maybe the format change would allow continued use of that screen if there is a significant expense, because I think that's the big issue. Any other questions, Councillor Devereux?
Oh yeah. All right. So with the current head count, this is on page 11. We've got here the numbers of where are we? Temporary, which is 19 grit. So bearing in mind that they're temporary and minusing them off and looking at the number of permanent positions, it looks to me like what we've actually got is 101 at the moment, actuals. Would that be correct?
You mean vacancies or?
So if you take out, right, the way I got to that figure was 451, which are the permanents, less the 35 temporaries, and then you add the vacants. So that puts our organisation having 501 permanent positions. Would that be correct?
So this, through Mr Mayor, this is a reflection of what FTEs or full-time equivalents are in the organisation at the moment.
I've just realised that.
It's not a reflection of the establishment. So I considered that last night, and I was talking to the CEO this morning, and I think what we need to do is bring back as part of the quarterly report, a report against our FTEs as they are in the organisation at this juncture, as opposed to our budget, as opposed to our establishment. There's a 3-way reconciliation that needs to happen.
I'd also like to compare it to where we were in 2020, because even when we came into office, some of us were of the opinion that council was a bit top-heavy, and it just seems to have gone more top-heavy from what I've been reading. So
through Mr Mayor, could I suggest that we bring that, we could bring that back to a workshop or a formal report back to council and compare 2020 as opposed to May 2022, as opposed to
23.
budget.
Thank you very much.
I think there'll be some challenges in that space. I know part of the program to limit the perceived number of staff in the past was to have a lot of temporaries or a lot of job agency recruitment that wasn't really listed. So there'll be some maybe some distorted numbers in that space. So it'll be interesting to see what staff can drill down on.
I have never understood how complicated it needs to be when in any
Well,
business.
it doesn't need to be.
You know how many staff you've got and all the rest of it. I've
We-
never understood why it's so confusing.
Well, I think there are moments when you know, and I've had this discussion with the Queensland Audit Office. If you look at last term, some would suggest we probably misled the Audit Office hand over fist, year in, year out. But we got glowing reports. You know, we were financially stable, everything was hunky-dory. Now the organisation, through the instructions of the elected representatives, be honest. Just be black and white honest. And the audit report, comes back and it says there's these issues and that issues. Well, the issues that we have now are, a pinprick on what we had in the past. We get reports that highlight those issues because the organisation is being honest. And yet in the past, when we probably weren't so honest, we got glowing reports. So there's it comes down to the elected representatives demanding of the organisation that they be honest. And you're right, it's not hard. The organisation is doing it now, but we don't have a track record from years ago of being that way. But it shouldn't be difficult, and there shouldn't be smoke and mirrors of, well, let's get them under a contract or through an employment agency, and that puts them into a different category. So we don't need to actually put them down as an FTE. We can shuffle deck chairs that way. We don't want to know.
I think there was an article on the weekend about that exact thing.
Righto.
Yeah.
But look, it's just good that the organisation understands that honesty is paramount.
Oh, definitely felt a shift. So, which is great. Still going, if I can. With the recruitment, we've got two dedicated team of 2, experienced talent management. So when you say dedicated, is that all they're doing, or?
Through Mr Mayor, yes, that is their sole function. Because part of the problem was, the staff survey, one of the criticisms of the organisation was it was taking too long to recruit. So we've established this a specialised recruitment team. One's a permanent FTE that we've pulled out of a secondment from another position. One is a short-term placement, and their sole role is to engage in the recruitment process, liaise with relevant managers, and basically get people into the organisation or onboarded as quickly as possible from when the job's advertised.
So does that mean, well, I mean, that's great. Does that mean that we're spending less on job agencies and that sort of thing?
Do you mean through advertisements, or do you mean for temporary placements?
For finding people for the position, so that we pay them to go out and find them?
Yes, we are. We're doing a lot of that in-house now, but we still do use external agencies for some of our more senior roles or more specialised roles.
Yep, that's fair enough. I am pleased with that because I did hear a couple of instances in the public where people weren't contacted back after they'd made an application. So anything to improve that will be good because it reflects on the organisation. So thank you. And that's another section done. Well done. Human resources delegation. So this is page 12, policy and procedure reviews. What is a human resource delegation?
Through Mr Mayor, that's very similar to our financial delegations where the CEO will delegate to various officers around council delegations to undertake expenditure for a certain amount of dollars. So what we're talking about in human resource delegations is the CEO has delegated to various managers and officers within council approval to either employ officers or terminate up to a certain level or to issue disciplinary action. So it's basically just delegating the council delegates to the CEO various functions, and now the CEO is delegating to various officers within council some of those functions. So it's basically designed to streamline our, for want of a better word, our administrative HR processes.
Okay. Did you say dismissals there as well?
No, only the CEO can terminate.
Wonderful.
But the officers will provide a recommendation to the CEO.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Now, external exit statements, does that fit in here anywhere?
Yes, we've got some quotes for doing that at this juncture, so we're currently liaising with the CEO to determine which way we go. We thought we would undertake an initial 3 months trial to see how many officers do take it up, because it is, again, it is quite expensive to run that program.
Hopefully there won't be too many leaving. And I believe the good news is we are pretty close. Fleet review is the last one. What we have here is that we're reviewing a lot of the fleet staff. I mean, we employ people with fleet experience. So I am surprised every time when we employ people with the experience in a certain area, when we then have to go out and get consultants on that, because a lot of it, when I read it, would be stuff that I would assume that person would know about. Can you walk me through?
Yep, through Mr Mayor, we have lost a number of fleet managers over recent times, or fleet and workshop officers, and as a consequence of some of the executive decisions, we have borrowed off of our fleet in terms, financially speaking, so that our fleet is quite aged, both in terms of our light fleet and our heavy fleet.
And told it's aged 3 years ago. So.
And there is a feeling that the fleet we have isn't what we need to move the business forward. So this review is actually engaging across the organisation to firstly determine what items of kit do we need to run the business, and then that's the first decision, and then the second decision is how do we fund it, and then how do we maintain it, and then how do we replace it. So that's where the asset management plan comes into place.
That's good, thank you. I have one final point to make, just in regards to the number of vehicles which the public has a perception of going out of the region at the end of each day and coming in the morning. Now, people can live wherever they like. I'm absolutely fine with that, but I know that the idea that council's paying, fuel and wear and tear tyres and everything else for vehicles to go out of the region every night is a bone of contention. Is anything around that being looked at?
As part of this review, I know that the consultants undertaking the review have made commentary in relation to the number of vehicles that do exit the region, and they're considering, their view is that that's considered private use, and that we need to start to consider how officers contribute to those vehicles. But that may be a progressive implementation of a policy.
Thank you very much. And that's all.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Stewart.
First question, Mr Mayor, relates to the last time you presented the report about frontline versus back of house, and that was presented last time that report was made, and I got a very convoluted answer back in terms of how that's defined, because it's quite right, because it's really hard to define. So when you do present those figures on what's frontline and back of house, could we have good definition so we know what we're comparing to? And there's always going to be half our staff who are a mixture anyway. It's just so much grey area in that. And in the end, is council producing the goods for the community rather than individual staff anyway? Staff appraisals. So it's good the staff appraisals are being done, but what's the end result? So are there instances where maybe staff are put on a learning program or whatever, or improvement program, or what's the point of staff appraisals? There's got to be some sort of good, decent result.
Through Mr Mayor, I guess there's a number of results. One would be that you're performing adequately and reinforce the activities that have been done. The other one will be if performance is slightly below expectations, then there would be the officers will be put on a performance improvement plan, which would then be reviewed in consultation with the relevant managers to improve the overall performance of that officer. And if performance doesn't improve after that juncture, then there's other courses of action council may wish to consider.
And so the only other question really is about annual financial statements. So last year it was way behind for various reasons. So according to the report this year, it's on track. Is that definitely the case, or any dangers, any risks that it's not going to be on track?
Through Mr Mayor, I guess last year was an exception, but we did comply with our statutory obligations and that we got exemptions to complete our statements, probably related to the flood and a number of other issues. This year, Ms Catherall and her team are working and they have the process on track for completion by the end of October.
So, through the chair, just to add to the initial comments on the performance review process, we're already building upon not only assessing people to see where they sit in terms of performance and or lack of performance, but we're beginning to do a number of training programs for some of our key teams as well. So we're looking at those so that we can enhance or empower the teams to do even better work. So that's already happening through the director and the manager already. So look forward to more things in that space.
Councillor Smed.
As stated, we have two experienced, talented management officers now focusing on new positions. Are they extra positions on top of what we've already got in HR?
The two recruited officers.
Pardon? Sorry. Are they extra positions in HR? Or?
There's one position in HR. That's a temporary appointment, and that is 2 years while we address the issues that we're facing.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Devereux.
Found one. Page 16, standing orders. Now, we had that, it went out to a consultancy. It's come back to council and we had a chat about it. It's been an awfully long time. I'm just surprised at how long it's taken to turn that around and come back to us.
Sorry, Councillor.
Page 16, review of governance policies.
Yep, okay.
It says it's ready to come back to us, but what takes so long for those things to, after all that work, paid work? No, that's okay.
I guess we're just wanting to be sure that we have all of our processes right that link with the standing orders, and I guess part of that process is to we've undertaken an extensive review, and now the next part of the journey will be to engage with council to bring that back. So we're hoping to do that before the next September, October, aligned with our acceptable request guidelines.
Thank you. And finally, native title. Will, and I have asked this before, but I want to be reassured, will this affect the town plan timeframe at all?
I'd have to ask my fellow director that question.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the state planning principles do require consideration of native title issues within the planning scheme. Currently, the determination for the Cubby Cubby claim, we are being told, because of the enjoyment of additional families, is going to be determined later in October. That hasn't significantly impacted us so far, but it could. And it will probably impact us more once it's gone to the state government and we have provided our information to them. If they are unsatisfied with the level of consultation, they'll give it back to us. At this stage, it's an unknown, but it is a consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us. Is someone to move? Councillor Devereux, someone to second. Councillor Stewart, Councillor Devereux to speak.
I would like to, again, just thank you for going through this item orally when you sat down up there. I think it's important that the people who do watch the council meetings actually get an idea of what we're talking about rather than just the few questions that we pick out. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for the detailed report. It may shock you to learn that I couldn't ask the questions I do without there being some information in there. I hope that doesn't put you off. Thank you.
It might be as much information.
Everyone page.
Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, thank you for the report. I note the Family Fund Day disaster preparedness on the 14th of October should be good. I think they've happened in the past occasionally, a couple of years ago. So it'd be good, maybe due for another one probably. And I do note actually that they're going out to different outer areas as well, because I know there's been discussion with the Cedar Pocket Hall. So that's good to know too. So I'm happy to second the receipt of this report.
The speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Devereux to close.
I'd just like to thank you for answering my questions. I was satisfied with the answers, and I think it's important that the public gets to hear questions being asked, get the answers, gives a little bit more confidence in what we're doing here in this room. So thank you very much. I want to support it.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.2, Council Ordinary Meeting Action Report for the quarter four. And over to Mr. Lewis and Ms. Hatch.
Councillors. Item 6.2 is the meeting action report, quarterly report. Action items are anytime there's resolutions that are endorsed or approved at council, this report goes back through to make sure that it's completed off end to end. Since 23rd of April 2020, there's been 617 actions that council has recorded, and 7 of them are pending, and the report is attached. And Councillor Devereux, that's probably one of the times when you can't potentially there is an update on the report. So the first one in there, it talks about legal delegations through the Waste Reduction Recycling Act. The CEO already has those delegations, and they are currently being allocated to staff now that we have the correct titles, and so that will be coming back to council very soon. That's right across council, we're doing delegations. This next one, the notified motion about delegation for appointment of acting CEO, that raised a lot of conversation at the time we discussed it, and there has been it's a comprehensive report. We've gone out to multiple stakeholders, and I can release that probably to you after this meeting. The report's prepared and then getting ready for the September workshop. The other items on there are just, again, mostly around infrastructure. Are there any questions on any of the remainder of the items?
Questions, councillors? Councillor Devereux.
Not on those items. I did bring this up, that this goes back to the beginning of this council sitting,
Yes.
but there are items still hanging about from prior to that, and one would be the trees in Mary Street was the example I gave. And part of the reason why this is important, we saw the pushback from the community when council went out and actually replaced a couple of trees, and part of that was that the motion had been sitting there for like a decade and not much else had been done. So I really don't want to get to the point where council has the same pushback the next time we need to replace a tree. They've got to be done. We voted on a project as a council back then, voted on the project being rolled out. I just think we need to roll it out in a sort of a regular time. So I'm wondering what other motions are sitting out there from prior to us, because we know what we've done, but we don't know what was necessarily done before. You guys do, but
Yes,
thank you.
through you, Mr Mayor, we'll have to go back and have a look at those. That will be a work on our work programme.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? How far were you intending to go back? Because the tree one was,
It's a lot of work.
Going to, and that's the thing, like,
that'll be another staff member. To dig back through all the minutes of every meeting and wade through all of that and then determine, and then actually wade through the organisation to see what has been done and see what hasn't been done.
and
I know at least in this term we're keeping a check and a balance on that. I think there needs to be some balance around how far we go back. I think the tree one should be something that would be part of our maintenance program. And you would think the arborist would be over that and have a program that they have in play. But yeah, there might need to be some poetic licence given to how far we delve back into history.
And through you, Mr Mayor, like when we have a look at a lot of these things, many of them are written off, or not written off, but said that they're completed because they go into business as usual. So it would be a big load of work, but it can't be done. But decisions that have to be made on the efficiencies and value for money.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Devereux?
We did a motion to fix up the house at the sale yards, and that's not in here, is it? Was that a motion? Was that a motion?
No, we might have discussed it. I think don't know whether the motion.
Yeah.
So just on that one, elected members through the chair, there is a workshop in October that I believe is planned to talk about that one, so that will come back to elected members for your consideration.
No.
Any other questions, councillors? Have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Stewart, someone to second? No rush.
That's fine.
Councillor Smerdon, Councillor Stewart to speak.
It's good to know. It's good to be kept up to date with what's been done and what hasn't been done and often for good reason. And on Councillor Devereux's point of going back in history, I do know we talked in the last council, moved to motion last council about new master plan or whatever, reviewing the master plans at least for the CBD. So I know that's actually in train, but that'd be an example one. But I don't think we want to go back through every meeting for the last 10 years. So it's good to have this record. So appreciate that.
Councillor Smerdon.
Yeah, okay, councillor Stewart's sentiments, and happy to second.
Two speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? The other speakers for Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add.
That will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.3, Audit Risk Committee update.
Is through you,
Mr Lewis and Ms Hatch again.
through you, Mr Mayor. The Audit and Risk Committee are a committee that meet quarterly and provide advice to the council. The report is written by the chair of the committee, and it's pretty much a quote by quote of what the chair has provided to council. The matters that were discussed, and I can read out the headlines, I guess, is the QTC business improvement and CPA update. They talk about pro forma financial statements, the finance branch, the managers all give an update. The Queensland Audit Office also provide an update, or there's an update provided on the Queensland Audit Office. Internal audit status reports. They will look at items such as the cyber security, which we spoke about before, and that being a high risk and any other high risks. We have a risk management update that looks at all the risks across council. They have a governance update. So in my role as manager, I go to the Audit and Risk Committee and also provide an update on our section and what we've been doing, similar to the director's updates. Workplace Health and Safety Management System report. People and Culture, they have a look at the reports and comment and provide advice. The CEO provides an update and then a rolling plan for outstanding actions. All of the work of the Audit and Risk Committee is budgeted, and at times the Audit and Risk Committee also provide advice on policies to council. If there are any questions, I can take them back to the chairman of the Audit and Risk Committee.
Further to Ms Hatch's comments, I would also advise council that the pro forma financial statements have now been provided to the committee and to the our auditors.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Milne.
I have one. It's just a governance update. It's got the council portfolio meeting process, and it does say there that we're actually exposed to risk as councillors. Is this the actual current policy that sits in place, or the one that's being discussed and is ready back for presentation?
The one that's being discussed, and the actual policy of councillor portfolio meetings was the risk.
So it's not the current one?
Current setup and moving forward, how we roll out our councillor portfolio meeting process has been identified as a risk and has been brought to council in workshops for discussion.
Councillor Stewart.
I guess I'd make it rather question, more of a comment, I guess, on that, is that we know about the risk. Risk is there to be managed, and if you don't take risks, you don't take opportunities. So it's almost a so what statement. I know they've got to raise it that there's risk, but it's also, well, how do you manage that risk?
Councillor Devereux.
You finished there? Yeah. Just on that matter, I will mention, I mean, you all know my opinions on the portfolio situation. I didn't bring this up. This was brought up by the members of the meeting, another member of the meeting. The concern they have is, well, it comes around to it being a portfolio councillors are considered a political thing and not a organisational preferential thing or whatever. They're not. You don't have to have them, but the risks around it are. I don't know if it is worth it, but it's up to councillors to decide if they want to have this, not the organisation. So, but they do say there is a risk, and they have highlighted it.
Through Mr Mayor, one of the concerns of the Audit and Risk Management Committee is that their concern is that portfolio meetings could take the form of a informal council meeting under the structure.
Any questions, councillors?
Well, yeah, probably just on that, because the way the portfolio policy now is, it's just you regularly meet with them. It's not a meeting. It's to be informed of stuff, so you're across the strategies. So at least councillors can work. They've all got an area of knowledge that other councillors and the public can lean on. It's not actually a meeting as discussional type of stuff. So that's why I was asking, is the portfolio policy where they're sitting now, or procedure, is that a risk? Because it's just an informal discussion, but there has been discussions of trying to bring that into more formal meeting procedures.
Through Mr Mayor, we're probably being asked to put words into the mouth of the Audit Committee Chair and the representatives of that committee, but I believe the issue relates to the fact that all councillors are invited to our meetings, rather than under the current structure where you have a select number of councillors going to those meetings.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? I guess a comment I have is that this is similar to the Audit Office reports. If you look at our Audit and Risk Committee from 16 to 20, you would have thought the organisation was steaming along, and yet we weren't. So again, it's a credit to the organisation and to the elected representatives having their fingerprint on ensuring that we are honest with the Audit Committee rather than telling them what they want to hear. Sometimes that doesn't deliver the best outcomes, but at least we're actually looking to deal with the issues rather than shovel them under the carpet. So I think it's a very good step in the right direction that in spite of sometimes what is not positive feedback, we still push on with being honest about issues that are faced and challenges that we're trying to overcome. Any other comments, questions, councillors? Before we move on, we have recommendations there. We'll take as one. Someone to move. Councillor Polly, Councillor Fredman to second. Councillor Polly.
Thank you guys for the report. It's just good to see that higher level independent oversight of what we do, and I'm just happy to receive the report. Thank you.
Councillor Fredman.
Ditto. There's a couple of points though. I did miss the meeting, I was an apology, but a couple of the matters raised have been ongoing. One of the matters raised is improving the financial literacy of managers. I'd just like to add that arguably a problem that the committee has come upon through the CPA report is not only the financial literacy of managers, but also the culture of the organisation. So you can be financially literate and not care. So I myself, at the next meeting again, will be pushing that we get more feedback from the CPA report, the work that's been done since, and I'm particularly interested in how we're going in reviewing the culture of the organisation so they use their financial literacy to make this organisation better. The other thing I would comment on, which is we've discussed, but which has is still topical, I think, is the matter of portfolios. And the way I understand it, I believe this concern is very well founded. And my own experience is it's very hard to have portfolio meetings without discussing operational matters. And I would suggest that we consider very seriously the Audit Committee's concern, because it's quite real, and the reality is we are very much a different council to the last council, and it's all going well. We just have to keep on getting even better.
2 speakers for the recommendations. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Deborah.
I really enjoy being on the Audit Risk Committee. I think it's, I wish you all could be there actually, because there's a lot of information. I wish you'd show up. It's very interesting to hear an external take on the decisions that we're making. I support this. That's all I wanted to say.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Polly to close.
Nothing further to add? Happy to
That will go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.4, the procurement panel. Mr. Lewis.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I might hand over to Mr Harrop to address this report.
Morning, Mr Mayor, morning councillors. Before you today is the procurement panel report. There are 2 items on the report today for seeking your resolution. The first one being the Gympie Regional Council procurement plan. The idea behind this is that it's released publicly. It is a moving document, if you like. It's not the finished article, so as dates move and changes are potentially made, we will review this document, and it will be reviewed and then changed and uploaded for public review. The second item there is post-market for the supply of electricity to small meter sites within the Ergon and Energex areas. This is for the supply of electricity to 181 sites, and they range from offices, libraries to toilets and amenities blocks throughout the Gympie region. And the total annual consumption there is about 2.5 million kilowatt hours, and before you is a 3-year proposal, council resolution and acceptance.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Smith.
In relation to the electricity supply out west, you don't have one company to choose from, would you know?
Sorry?
You only be one supplier out west?
There were 2 suppliers that were approached on the panel. They were Origin and Shell. They were able to supply to the sites that we had and all the sites that were included within the approach to market, because it's not just our council, as you may have read. It is a number of councils and not-for-profit organisations that are included.
Okay.
So yes, there were 2 that could supply.
So has it been a quiet month for procurement, has it?
Yeah.
Or are we getting less information?
Yes, yeah, just a...
We are? Okay.
Councillor Stewart?
Just to go on from Councillor Smurden, so, yeah, previously we had the minutes of meetings, so that, will they be provided again in the future, or they just?
Yeah, the idea was to provide those minutes, because they're not for public view.
Yeah.
So to provide those minutes enclosed in the workshop environment.
Through Mr Mayor, we will continue to provide those minutes as per previous reports. It's just that, as one of the other councillors indicated, there's a bit of a lull in our procurement activities at this time.
They also came through rather late, so it got confusing because sometimes you would see minutes of meetings which of items that you've already approved the previous meeting, and it got confusing anyway. So whether they could be emailed out to us or something like that, rather.
Yes.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we're trying to resolve that process as well, so we're not duplicating minutes and meetings in the through the council with the same report.
Councillor Polly?
Excuse me for asking I don't understand the question, but I read this report. I sort of understood what I was reading, but I didn't understand why I was reading it, to be honest. What are we doing? Like, people plug in their power and they get a bill every quarter.
Yeah.
Or are you just trying to tender this out so it's a set rate, we know what we're going to pay, it's not variable, or?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. The reason that it's before you is due to the actual cost of the procurement. So it equates to 2.5 or potentially 2.1 million, which is above the CEO's financial delegation. So it's before you for resolution in order to adopt and award this.
I might just add, through Mr Mayor, basically there's a consortium of councils and not-for-profits, as James indicated, that go to market and try and achieve economies of scale and get the best price for the supply of electricity to councils' small sites, which basically, as Mr Harrop has indicated, our treatment plants, our libraries, things of that ilk. So it's an endeavour by a group of councils to get economies of scale, to get the best electricity prices we can. And it has to go to council because it's above the CEO's delegation to approve.
That's a way of council, or a bunch of councils stepping in to remove a middleman and going a little bit back further and just negotiating a rate, and that's what it is.
Through Mr Mayor, rather than us approach, say, for example, Shell or Ergon and those companies, through local buy or peak, we have a group of councils that go with a bulk purchase arrangement.
Yeah, and then is that rate still variable, or that's it, depending on usage, is it still linked to usage?
It's linked to usage. There are two elements. There's the fixed element, which is based on the access to the electricity, and then there's the price will alter, which is why it's a provisional figure based on our historic usage, based on usage. So it is a fixed price per kilowatt hour, and then usage will increase and decrease.
Yeah,
the bill
so if we spend 100 grand and whack on a bunch of solar panels and come down, that saving will still flow through.
Yeah.
Whatever,
So the increase at 110%, that's over double the rate that we previously had?
Yes, it is correct, yeah. Based on market supply and demand and the current electricity marketplace being what it is, it's increased the rate by, as you say, 110%.
Councillor Devereux?
Do you reckon residents could get together, form a little group and do the same thing? What do you reckon? All of Gympie? Just putting it out there.
Maybe that's something.
Take it on notice.
Councillor Stewart?
Mr Mayor, in regards to the procurement plan, I've always exercised a bit of a war on acronyms. So just in future iterations of this plan, could you make sure the acronyms like RFT and RFQ, and I'm sure TBC is to be confirmed, but if they could be just explained.
Sure.
For, well, we should know, I guess the general public may not. And also in regards to that, I was confused because I'm always confused, I guess. page 70, and it's got, this is just one example, it's got Easter Creek Road widening, and it's got just under $1 million. The Easter Creek, and then it's got going to, what's it called? Procurement, proposed procurement strategy has got to be confirmed.
That's
Was
the
it the date?
expected
Yeah, no, still, and yet it's more than half done, and so why would we going to tender or whatever if it's already more than half done? And I think there might be another example like that, so I'm just a bit confused by that.
Yeah, it would probably be, for you, Mr Mayor, this would be a staged element, and this phase would be a further phase to that.
Probably, I think we're doing internally, the only thing we do externally would be the sealing of the road, so maybe it's that, but in this case, why isn't it say Q1, because it's at the stage where they'd be getting someone to do it.
Yes.
So I'm just, anyway, he probably can't answer and probably doesn't need an answer, it's just probably just, it's the first time we had this report and probably the industry over time.
Through Mr Mayor, this report is designed to alert our suppliers to significant procurements that may be coming up in the market, so that they're aware and preview what is happening.
Any other questions, councillors? Have two recommendations there before us. We'll deal with recommendation 1. Is there someone to move? Councillor Devereux, someone to second. Councillor Smoot, Councillor Devereux to speak.
It's always good to have a plan, and I'm just happy to move it. Thanks for bringing it to us.
Councillor Smoot.
Happy to move. Happy to second, I should say.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Devereux to close.
Nothing more to add, thank you.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Recommendation 2 in relation to the supply of electricity. Is there someone to move? Councillor Stewart, someone to second. Councillor Smoot, Councillor Stewart to speak.
Well, we need power to run things, and it's good to know that we're combining or cooperating with other councils to try and get the best price possible. So I'm happy to move that we accept this tender.
Councillor Smoot.
Agree with Councillor Stewart. It's good that we can group with other councils and try and get a better price for our council, which filters down to the constituents and the rates. So good achievement. Happy to second.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Fredman.
Mr Mayor, this highlights one of the reasons why rates have to go up. We can't absorb forever these enormous increases in our costs. You might think we don't use a lot of electricity, but between the sewage treatment plants and the water treatment plants alone, we have a huge bill. And this increase is one of the reasons why we have trouble keeping rates down. And it's absolutely out of our control. Even though we've got together with other councils, Mr Mayor, it doesn't help much. 100% increase is still 100%. And our rates have gone up 5.5%. So I think this is a reality that we all need to understand, accept, and also tell our constituents, because rate increases are done with considerable pain to all of us. And that's one of the good reasons, this example is one of the good reasons why we have to wear them.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Stewart to close.
Did I? Yeah, you did. Okay, nothing further to add then. Sorry. Surprise. I'm on to the next motion.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 6.5, LGAQ Conference Councillor Representation for 2023. And over to Mr Lewis and Ms Hatch again.
Through you, Mr Mayor, this report is to determine who is going to go to the LGAQ conference in Gladstone on the 16th to 18th of October. The benefits, I guess some of you have been before. Did anyone want to say the benefits of going to one of these?
I'd love to touch on that. They're great. through going to the last conference up in Cairns, that's when I met Bridget at the RSEQ Foundation, and got lots of free stuff for Gympie. It was great. You can benefit a lot from this. I think it's great and should be represented. Some people hate them. I love them. It's a great way to network, and those who hate them shouldn't go.
And through you, Mr Mayor, like one of the recommendations that we had previously was that anyone who does go comes back and brings their learnings to the rest of the council. So today I have had expressions of interest from Councillor Polly and Director Adrian Burns. Was there anyone else interested to go? We had there's 3 positions including the mayor. Was there anyone else who wanted to go or wanted to nominate, or I basically need to know how we can work out who, because the early bird closes on the 25th of August.
I'd expressed interest to the CEO.
Okay, yeah.
I definitely have an interest, but I've already been to one, so
Through Mr Mayor, I think two of the delegates are subsidised through our membership of LGAQ. So 2 councillors can go, and there's no impost for councillors that any additional ones will get additional cost.
I'm quite happy to stay at home this time.
I'll stay home.
Me?
We'll hold the fort here.
All right, so then we've got Councillor Miller, Councillor Polly, Mayor Hartwig.
There you
go.
We have a recommendation there, councillors. Someone to move. Councillor Devereux, someone to second. Councillor Jensen. Councillor Devereux to speak.
thank you. I am very pleased that we're going to adjust what we agreed with back in 2020. This is sort of the issue, and I would like to highlight it with new councillors. I was naive when I came in. I didn't understand exactly what the networking benefits and the learning benefits I was going to be missing out on by removing the opportunity to go to these. And yes, we could still send 2, but it tended to be the mayor and deputy mayor. And there's a lot to come out of this, and I'll be interested when the 2 councillors come back and what they say they got out of it. So there's a lot I found to get out of it that was really good. Councillor Jensen's already touched on it. I would encourage every councillor in this room to attend at least one conference or convention, and I would encourage any new councillors in the next term to do the same just as quickly as they can, because you will learn a lot about your job just from talking to the other councillors and the other council's staff. Thank you.
Councillor Jensen.
I'll just echo what Councillor Devereux said. You can get a lot from these, networking with other councillors and other councils and seeing how they operate is wonderful, and getting things for us. Like, I just went to the local women's LGWA, Local Government Women's Association, and I don't know why it's exclusive for women, because everyone could have got I got a lot out of that term, and we sang the praises of Gympie while we were down there with our local housing, the issues that we have jumped on it, and so yeah, the information that you get, the information that you share, and the networking that you can do is highly recommended. And Councillor Polly, can you get me a new glass drink bottle from the trade partners, because I broke mine? Please? Thanks. That's all.
2 speakers for the recommendation, any speakers against? Councillor Stewart.
Of course.
Yes, I'll speak again. So yeah, I want to make clear I don't hate conferences I've been to. I just found I've been to too many over the decades in different jobs, so I'm not interested in going myself. I've no doubt there's an advantage in the mayor and councillors going. I just think it's a case of the law of diminishing returns, as economists will call it, where one person goes, it's a big advantage, second person goes, it's not such a big advantage, third person goes, and you get less and less return to council. It is unfortunate that this term has been disrupted by COVID, but The reality is, in a normal term of council, each councillor, if it's shared around property, would have opportunity to go to either the Australian Local Government Association Conference or the LGAQ Conference in a term. And since I said I'm over conferences these days, they would give someone a second chance. I just think it's not good value for council to send a third councillor, as in the mayor being councillor too, to a conference. So I'm happy, I'm really glad we've got two wonderful councillors who are wanting to go, but on principle, I have to vote against this.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Miller?
Just responding to Councillor Stewart, when it comes to investment within council, we get 2 complimentary tickets anyway, so it's council's going. I'm not quite sure on the maths that you've worked out for opportunities to go, but I can, 1 extra person every 4 years is only 4 people because the mayor has to go because you go there because there are certain motions. There's a big advocacy thing with the conference, and that's what I'm really interested in going to, is seeing where we can actually take our advocacy to. Networking is great as well, but there is that I think we're missing out of. We're not putting up what our region needs, and so I want to understand that process a lot more. So I see that as a value. We're only paying 1 more ticket. I know other councils send the whole lot of the councillors up sometimes, they have the option. With this one, it was a motion I put through and I was happy for that one back in 2020 because we were trying to save money. So yeah, the investment of an extra person outside of the 2 complimentary tickets. This one, I'm feeling that, the two councillors plus the mayor would give everyone in a term a go to go in. So it probably should be, in my opinion, a standard to give everyone a go. And that is an investment. So we can actually get more of that advocacy going through council, get some more better outcomes for the region. So I'm happy to vote for it, and I encourage Councillor Stewart to.
I'll just speak on the recommendation. These events are specifically designed, I think, for the extroverts that just love to get together and socialise, and that's great. I understand the role as mayor requires an attendance, and there is benefits in terms of meeting other mayors and other councillors and discussing different options that other local government entities use. There is. I think in that space, though, there's probably work to be done by the organising bodies, because when you go year after year, you see similar or the same exhibitors, often touching on similar or topics during discussion, and I think there is an opportunity to have, particularly at the Albert Conference, have things that are actually focused for the whole country, not just for specific tiny areas that may be rather vocal. So as much as they are valuable, I think, for the connections with other councillors, I think there's probably a little bit of work to be done by the organisations to make them relevant for those that go year after year, rather than a sort of the same bat time, same bat channel. But I'm happy to support the recommendation. Any other speakers for or against, councillors? With that, Councillor Devereux to close.
Just in closing, I do have a different take on it. I am not an extrovert. I'm an introvert. I can fake it. I fake it very well. But social situations exhaust me. So for me, it was sitting in front of speakers and listening to them talk. I got a lot out of it, like on the Outback Way and all those sorts of things. I thought it was fantastic. I'd love to get to the point where I'm seeing stuff repeated, because it means I've been to more than one. So that would be great. I encourage everyone to support this if you go, and you'll get a lot out of it. Thank you.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour?
Can we vote on it?
Councillor Polley, Councillor Wardock, Councillor Smoot, Councillor Hartwig, Councillor Jensen, Councillor Devereux, Councillor Fredman, Councillor Mill. Against? Councillor Stewart. The motion is carried. Item 6.6, the July financial report. I'll hand over to Mr Lewis and Ms Hatherall.
Through Mr Mayor, I'll hand over to Ms Hatherall to update council on the results of their financials to the 31st of July 2023.
Good morning, Mr Mayor and councillors.
The report you have before you is the end of month report for July. Similar to our June end of month, this report is impacted by the end of financial year. So these numbers were put together. The reports are a summarised version of the July financial results because July was impacted by our end of financial year processes. We still have a couple of accounting treatments that we have to process as part of the end of financial year in preparation for our auditors to arrive. But generally, the financial results for July tend to indicate that we're on track. One thing I would like to point out is the operational expenditure is over budget at this point, and that's because we're waiting for an end of year accrual to be processed in the employee costs area. Our cash is quite high compared to our previous year, and that's on the back of receiving a lot of prepayments as a result of our REAPA program our recovery programs being approved by the Queensland Reconstruction Authority. The outstanding for our rates is slightly high as well, but that's because we issued our rates on the last couple of days of July. So a truer indication of the progress of outstanding rates will be closer to the due date of the rates, which is in September. I would like to also just mention that in preparing these reports, we did overlook updating the date of the budget being adopted, so it refers to February 2023, so we'll fix that formatting. And hopefully for the August reports, we'll be producing those reports out of technology systems. So, any questions? I'll welcome.
Questions, councillors? If there's no questions, we have a recommendation there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Stewart, Councillor Polley to second. Councillor Stewart, speak.
Mr Mayor, it's always a bit hard when you just got 1 month's figures and there's the interference from the previous financial year. Things seem to be basically going on track, but probably a better idea next month. So I'm happy to move the report.
Councillor Polley?
Actually, Councillor Stewart said exactly what I was going to say, so I'm just happy to second this report and see how we're going in the coming months.
Great minds think alike, isn't it?
You're right.
Apparently not with conferences, but.
Two speakers for the recommendation. Is there any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stewart to close.
Nothing further to add, thanks.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. We might, councillors and staff and gallery, might just take a morning tea break or a comfort stop for those that need a break. 15 or 20 minutes, is that enough?
Yep.
Yeah, cup of tea. Just, right. We'll adjourn to 10 to 11.
The introvert.
They don't believe you. I can tell you here.
I am.
How can you be a Facebook Take a seat, please.
Councillor Jensen.
Welcome back, councillor, staff and gallery. We'll continue with item 7.1, the TLPI. Hand over to Mr Burns.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As we discussed with councillors at the workshop, council has a current temporary local planning instrument that protects the biodiversity in the region. This document is scheduled to run out in February next year. As there is going to be what we perceive to be a lag between the final adoption of the planning scheme and the cessation of this temporary local planning instrument, we are seeking council approval to write to the minister and adopt a new temporary local planning instrument. The point of reference there, I guess, is that we can't extend our existing document, and so we're asking to simply create a new one that is, to all intents and purposes, identical to the old one until the adoption of the planning scheme. There are one or two slight mapping tweaks that will be undertaken. Those mapping tweaks are where we are aware that the mapping on the existing TLPI has changed or is slightly incorrect, and so it's just acknowledgement of what those tweaks are, but there is no intent to either redo the TLPI in its entirety or do the mapping. And as a result, we're just seeking approval from councillors to allow the CEO to ask the minister, can we do this? If we get that approval, we'll ask the minister. If the minister says yes, we'll bring a report back to council to then subsequently adopt a new TLPI before the old one runs out in February.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Wardle.
Just two quick little questions. If there's something not right after it's been approved, can this be amended?
Through Mr Mayor. So the proposal at this stage is to pretty much run with the current TLPI and effectively renew it. In the new planning scheme, we will look more closely at mapping and the provisions, and it will be tweaked to reflect the experience of the past 18 months.
Through you, Mr Mayor, direct response to that question. No, we can't tweak the TLPI, but we will do that work in the planning scheme.
Because we've been through this where we were told it can't be amended or can't be changed, the TLPI.
That's through you, Mr Mayor, that's correct. That's what I did just say. We cannot change the TLPI once we adopt it, but we can change the planning scheme, which will be the document that this will run into sometime next year.
Okay. My second question was, are you sure?
I'm not sure. Through you, Mr Mayor, I'd like to hope so.
Thank you.
Quite disappointed if my team have given me incorrect advice, but I'm reasonably confident.
Thank you.
Councillor Polly.
Mr Mayor, so my question to that is timing. Potentially, we could have a different council March next year, so they're going to be doing the new planning scheme, and they're going to have no history at all in this TLPI. So you could have people who haven't got a clue what they're looking at. So, or can we get a look at this before we may not be here in March?
Through you, Mr Mayor, that is a question that we have talked about briefly at various workshops before. The simple answer to that is that the state interest check is still planned to go to state government before this council, before the next council election, and that means that this council will have seen the documentation that we are intending to be in the future plan. It's then very difficult to change that. In addition to that, the current TLPI is the basis of the document that we are putting into the planning scheme. There are some minor amendments, and we'll cover those when we bring the final policy papers for adoption, but they're not significant in any way, shape or form. And what you see as a TLPI will arguably be almost identical to what will end up in the planning scheme. Yes, it will be adopted by a new council, but all the work will have happened by this council, and it will be extremely difficult, dare I say potentially embarrassing for a new council to go to the state government and say, we don't like that. The argument is that the officers provide you with a document that, and we maintain that consistency through the picture.
Yeah, so you're saying they really can't change it, but that you're also saying that we have not much chance of changing it ourselves anyhow.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they can always change it. That's within the prerogative. But we can also change it. The fact is, however, if we do change it, it's a time-related argument. The more changes we impose or wish to bring forward, the longer it will take to finalise the documentation.
I realise that this person needs an instrument like this, but I still cannot understand why it has to cover every square inch of the region, especially rural areas where we already have state government overlays which restrict clearing, that sort of thing. Why have we got to cover the rural areas?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I might defer to Ms. Kinchington, but in essence, if my answer doesn't answer you, in essence, in the rural areas, we are just duplicating.
Why do we duplicate it then?
Simply because it's simpler to control and simpler for us to manage and easier for our community. If we can assess it at our level without having to send it off to the state, then it's a lot simpler for the community.
But if you've got a white zone in a rural area and you want to clear, it hasn't got to go to state, has it? But now it has to come to council, does it not?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, the white zones don't have to. There is approved development in the green zones, and then there is a formal application process for within the core of the orange zones. And as I've said previously, most of our requests, and I even had one this week, we had a fairly robust meeting with some members of the community. It was about development in the green zone. They can always still prepare the housing block, which is the 500 square metres. There's significant allowance for fire line and fence clearing management, and as you would know, Councillor, I've spoken to a couple of your divisional constituents about that in the last couple of weeks. And also there are allowances for other elements of clearing. And you can still clear weed species and vegetation under the Vegetation Management Act, as well as under the TLPI, depending on what it is. Really what we're trying to do is protect the significant species trees, and biodiversity doesn't really differentiate between urban and rural areas. The things and species that we're trying to protect, they go across the spectrum of the region.
That's good.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Mill?
Slight confusion for myself, Dan, understanding. So it's about the new TPLI. I thought you said that there's a mapping tweaks, but I think you're saying it's existing as it is, and I believe you might have been referring to the planning scheme tweaks. I just got confused.
Yes.
Because I know there is some mapping, not quite, this is just taking in some areas that probably need defining, which is some urban areas. I know some know my way. Is the exemptions that we still have in place for this current TLPI, for those mapping just inconsistencies for use, are they going to keep carrying through? So it's reflected.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Kinchington just reminded me that I did misspeak. The original plan was to do some tweaking, and we decided against that because of the complexity of that to the TLPI. So we are not tweaking the TLPI, but we are tweaking the planning scheme mapping. Sorry, that's me confusing councillors and confusing myself.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Mill?
I just note the date of 23rd of February. Obviously, that's when our next TLPI runs out. Are we confident that we can get something that runs from that date to keep a continual biodiversity protection process?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's one of the reasons we decided not to tweak mapping. Yes, we have every confidence that we will get a response from the Ministry in time to bring a report back to Council to get a continuation of the TLPI. We've even been in touch with the department this week discussing that and some questions they had. because we've already started to work with the department. So 100% we're confident that, as confident as we can, that we will have the TLPI in place should council wish to pursue that.
Any other questions, councillors? No recommendations there before us. Is there someone to move? Councillor Milne, someone to second? Councillor Stewart, Councillor Milne to speak?
As a region in a bigger picture of Australia and obviously the world, biodiversity is very relevant, and we all have a place to protect biodiversity. We are in a place, obviously, in our future as societies where we need to start considering biodiversity on a greater level. I believe that we are also hitting on obligations of the state planning policy in our original planning scheme to reflect those obligations that we do have as a local government. I have great confidence in the team that they are going to bring this forward. I haven't heard any major concerns with the current TLPI other than some mapping irregularities, but I believe they've been addressed with some exemptions. So I'm confident and very happy to move that we go and make this new TLPI, which is basically the same one. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
Mr Mayor, one reason why people move here or visit here, why tourists come here, is because of our environment, and it's worthwhile to protect while also allowing development. So I think the TLPI does integrate that quite well between the protection and enhancement of the environment and new development. So I do note that there will be adjustments made likely when it goes into the new planning scheme, whenever that may be. And so I'm confident that people do raise issues about the current TLPI or the renewed TLPI that will be considered for the new planning scheme. So I'm happy to move this motion.
For the recommendation, any speakers against? No other speakers for? Councillor Milne to close.
Happy to move to the vote.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 8.1, Infrastructure Services, proposed renewal of lease for Warona Association Incorporated. Hand over to you, Mr. O'Byrne.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Someone was stirring me about my husky voice a short while ago. So hopefully you can hear me okay. Councillors, first of all, apologies that Estelle Cummins, Miss Cummins, usually would be presenting this report. She's actually called in sick today. And the manager, Ed French, is actually off on leave. So unfortunately, or fortunately, you actually have me to actually present this report. A fairly simple report, councillors. Basically, the renewal of a lease for this organisation. They provide quite valuable services. They're registered with the National Disability Insurance Scheme. They've been a tenant for the last 10 years. This is a proposed renewal of that lease for another 10 years. We can actually say that with inspections we've conducted on the property is very well maintained. They've been conducting enhancements to that property on their own back. So the recommendation is as stands, and I'll take the rest of the report as being read if you have any queries.
Questions, councillors? Councillor Devereux.
Hello. I have some questions related to this and not. So if you could just give it a red hot. Ready?
Okay.
So we have a number of community groups looking for a home at the moment, at any one time actually. I'm sure most councils do. I was just wondering, I didn't even know this was a council building. How did this come to be? Like, did we build that for this purpose, or Bob obviously knows a little bit of history here? Do you want to ask?
So through yourself, Mr. Mayor, obviously it will be for my time.
Yes, yeah.
I have to take that on notice unless anyone else can ask the pensioner conversation.
Well, I don't know whether this is the right forum, but that was a beautiful timber church on that site, and it was the home of it was called the Band Hall, And actually, in this particular case, it was the home of the Gympie band, the brass band. They demolished the church and built the building as we know it. And then I believe they disbanded. And like everything else that happens, ends up in our lap.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. That answers that one. The only other question I have is, does council pay the insurance on the building? Is that included in one of our buildings, or do they have to? I couldn't see a reference.
Councillor, I will have to take that on notice through yourself, Mr Mayor. I mean, generally, Ms Kellings will be able to answer detail in relation to the specifics around the lease. So generally, the insurance of the actual building itself and the structure would be ourselves, and then the tenant would actually then be responsible for the insurance of anything else within that building. But if I can take that on notice,
certainly. Thank you.
And get back to you with a detailed response.
Thank you very much.
It would be similar to a landlord tenancy agreement. If you're a tenant of a residential property, you can't have insurance to cover the building or even a commercial property. So I think we'll find that it's just that they cover their own public liability and contents, and we cover the building itself. Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us. Someone to move, Councillor Devereux, someone to second. Councillor Waldock, Councillor Devereux to speak. Thank you very much.
I really like it when we've got somewhere to put local community groups, and this Waroona are fantastic with what they do. I love the fact that they've recently spent $300,000 upgrading their office space, undertaking maintenance. They're looking after the place. It gives me confidence going forward. I also like the fact that the rent isn't $120 a year. So that's great. Covers the building insurance. Thank you.
Councillor Waldock.
A cut and paste lease, I guess, where we've got a community group that benefits the community, so happy to second.
2 speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Devereux to close.
Happy to go to the vote.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 8.2, RNPC contract with Department of Transport. Over to you, Mr O'Byrne.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Through yourself, councillors, this is basically the annual renewal of, as the Mayor mentioned, what we know as the RNPC contract, which is the road maintenance performance contract that we actually undertake and paid for by the Department of Transport and Main Roads. As we've noted, the contract value is, excuse me, the contract value at this stage stands at about $3.7 million. It is nearly a 10% increase from the last year. Part of that is actually because of the escalation in prices, but part of it also is an increase in scope. Generally, what we do find is throughout the year, there are actually add-ons to the services requested through additional maintenance works. And so we would be anticipating that this particular contract may get to around about $4.5 million of services provided to the department by Council Resources. Any questions, councillors?
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Polly first. Devereux.
So just checking, so this is all pre-arranged work? Like, we know what we're going to be doing for our $4 million. It's not on-demand repair work or, that sort of thing, yeah?
So, councillor, through yourself, Mr Mayor, the 3.75 are actually defined packages.
Yeah, right. Yep.
And each of those packages have set rates as agreed. The uplift from the 3.7 to the 4.5 potentially is ad hoc request from the department. But we're not. It's not a demand by the department. It's generally a request. Can you undertake this work for us?
Okay.
So we don't actually have to sacrifice any of their own business as usual.
Thank you.
Councillor Devereux.
Thank you. It's along the same lines. I once suggested, with so many unfilled positions in our roads department and so many of our own roads needing essentially medical attention, that we drop this external work and focus on getting our own stuff up to scratch. And I was promptly it was explained to me by a certain councillor that we want to keep that work because it's the profit margin's good, and the more importantly, the expertise that we learn from it helps us with our own roads. I just, while we're in a public forum, wanted to ask, is that still the case, still your opinion? And yeah, is that how you describe it?
No, thanks, Councillor. Through yourself, Mr Mayor. The actual, the works themselves, first of all, address the surplus, not profit, if you like, the surplus that potentially is created out of undertaking this work. The state government basically have the partnership arrangement with local governments to provide these maintenance services. It's accepted that there potentially is a slight surplus, and that allows some ebb and flow, if you like, through the undertaking of the contract through the contract period to actually pick up some losses and surpluses, if you like. So there is an understanding. At the end of the day, there's a net surplus. So that is a benefit to council in its own right. As far as actually undertaking these services as opposed to undertaking our normal services, because the packages are defined and we know what work is coming up, we can plan for it. So therefore plan to actually have the resources. To answer the resource issue, you would have heard at previous forum that we were basically under-resourced by about 30% of the roads area. We've now got that down to about 8%. That's on the back of Director Lewis's comments previously around the recruitment effort that's been occurring. So the resources are significantly being addressed. There is the surplus, and it's planned activities. So all of that basically means we can actually undertake projects without impacting our business as usual.
And as we've got our roads come off them, I guess there's a little bit of wiggle room there to try and smooth it into one to the other. Doesn't have to be a defined.
Look, Councillor, right. So what we can do is incorporate some of the, the mobilisation efforts. We're out and about doing this work. We can then be doing other work remotely, which is on our own road network. But the other benefit, apart from the benefits I've already outlined, is it does allow us to actually increase our resource levels, plant and equipment, so human resources as well as plant and equipment, and provide us a bit more redundancy and a bit more of a buffer, if you like, from our own resource level perspective. So that's another benefit.
Lovely. Thank you very much for the answer.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us. Councillor Smerd to move, Councillor Fredman second, Councillor Smerd to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As I'm sure at my old age, councillor across the table would agree, this is a partnership with it's just a good win-win for council as far as I'm concerned, and we're not doing it for nothing, we're doing it for a good rate. Continue the partnership is quite smart as far as I'm concerned. Happy to move.
Councillor Fredman.
If you look at the big picture, we're very lucky to be able to get this contract, Mr Mayor. You just look to the south of us, you'll see all the maintenance of main roads is done by contractors. That would be a disaster, in my opinion, for our community, because all the work that is done by our staff. If it went out to contract, it would be done by staff probably who live at the Sunshine Coast. There are other reasons for being excited about this being offered to us. It does increase our skill base because we are keeping up through this work with all the latest technology and trends to do with road maintenance. And the reality, I suppose, is that it's a good thing that we have some control over the standard, the maintenance standard of the declared roads in the area from Rainbow Beach through to Burbidge. Sometimes it is a pain in the backside, particularly in those years when we have our own staffing problems. But if you look at the big picture in the long term, it's really great that we get this contract. The state government, it's totally their decision. They can outsource it like they've done in other councils around here. But we've got this arrangement whereby we tender, we learn a lot from it. It's a huge benefit for local employment to my knowledge, we don't make a loss on it. We don't actually make a windfall profit either. Nonetheless, it's a very good thing for our council, and we must continue to perform well to get these offers and learn from everything that happens as a consequence of this and push on into the future.
Thank you, Councillor Fredman. Two speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Smurden to close.
Happy to move, Mr. Mayor.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 8.3, asset management policy. And over to Mr. O'Byrne and Mr. Watson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through yourself, Mr. Mayor, this presentation, the asset management policy, is furthered as some workshops we already had with councillors. It's outlining where we want to move forward from a policy point of view. If I can hand over to Mr. Watson just to take us through some of the important detail with regards to the changes.
Yeah, so to carry on from the June ordinary meeting, we held the policy over on the table just to revise a few of the principles, just to ensure that through the policy, council does commit to the right or the desired level of asset management. So through that, the focus is really on section 4, which is the policy statement and the principles contained herein, and principally two of the lines have been clarified to really make sure it's clear that council does commit to the required asset management activities, all being underpinned by the service levels that council adopts. Obviously, across all of the work we're doing on asset management plans, there will be decision points on service levels through those discussions. This policy then makes sure that once we make those decisions, we do carry that through with the correct amount of funding. And in that, in terms of the service levels, we make sure we are complying with our legislative requirements, but we're also balancing long-term financial costs as well as the resources that we have available. So in addition to what we spoke about in June, they're the main changes, and we're looking to get the policy endorsed through this meeting.
Any questions, councillors? Have a recommendation there before us. Someone to move. Councillor Fredman, Councillor Smurden second. Councillor Fredman speak.
I endorse the changes. Basically, what the changes imply is that council sets the standard for asset management. Simple as that. If we halve the budget, we'd only be doing half of the proper asset management. So it does tie council into being a major player in terms of our level of service and our asset management policies. And it's all about cost, and our role is all about funding, and this marries the two together. Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Okay, Councillor Fredman's sentiments. This is something that's been sadly lacking for quite some time, and I'm happy to see that we finally reached this point, so I'm happy to second.
Two speakers for the recommendation. Any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stewart.
Mr. Mayor, this reminds me of a recent ongoing conversation with a constituent who wants their road verge mowed right to the very fence line. And I just think of cost, it's level of service. So what level of service do we provide the community? And it's really important to see that the level of service that we're willing to provide is an important factor in this. And that argument that we can make public that there is a trade-off there which we need to work on and need to talk with our community. The other thing is the whole life cost of assets, and before, so we need to get that whole of life costing into our planning. So I know there's been a lot of public discussion about whether we need more sporting fields. Part of the discussion needs to be, well, how much is that going to cost every year to mow and whatever else. So we need to get it, in some ways we need a policy for how we create assets that includes the whole life side of things, but it's good to see that it's in here as well. So I'm happy with this.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Fredman to close.
I think it's been said, Mr Mayor.
With that, we'll go to vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 8.4, Furnace Road Stormwater Drainage Upgrades. I'll hand over to Mr Watson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. This is a response that is provided further to a petition that was tabled in June of this year. If I can just hand over to Mr Watson to provide some detail in relation to the response.
So the report brought forward is just to give councillors an insight as to the background of the petition and the plan moving forward. Fairly simple in that there is a compliance issue that is being undertaken on Furnace Road, but an alternate solution would exist where council invests capital funding into that street to upgrade the stormwater drainage. So to manage that, I guess we've identified the work required. It's gone onto our region-wide list for prioritisation for future funding. However, the compliance action is the priority here, and if we resolve that, then the need for capital funding does reduce. So the report is before you today, just to note, in answer to the petition, essentially.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Polly?
What was the problem that the petitioners were trying to fix? Are their houses getting flooded?
There is some stormwater that's entering private property.
Yep.
And that's related to, like I said, I don't
Yeah,
want
can't
too many
get away.
details of compliance issue there. So this would, in essence, by providing stormwater, we would capture some for it over tops of the Curtin Channel, but obviously the priority is to make sure that infrastructure works and is rectified.
So you're saying if you pursue the compliance, you could get whoever stuffed it up in the first place to fix it at their cost?
Yeah, correct, yeah, because the work's been undertaken outside of council standard.
Yep.
Drawing, yeah.
What's the potential timeline for that to happen?
So that particular activity is with Adrian's team. As far as I'm aware, they are actively pursuing that. However, providing a timeline is probably not in our interest.
Yeah, I know it's not really a question you can answer, but I'm sort of half thinking that the cost of pursuing that compliance would be more than the 43 grand it costs you just to do it.
Yeah, but in terms of the region-wide investment into stormwater drainage infrastructure, obviously this is one issue out of, I would dare say, hundreds.
Yeah.
And this, regardless of this compliance activity, this particular job does not jump to the top of the list either. So if we were to invest $43,000 in stormwater drainage works, it would probably be somewhere else anyway, a more high priority site.
Yep. I know a dog park that can be a bit smaller, you'd say.
Councillor Warder?
Can I just confirm, just use the word priority?
Yep.
Councillor Devereux?
Thank you. So if this was mentioned back in February, in conjunction with some investigations, also McPhail Street and Westvale Court. Are those other two, have they been done or being looked at or?
No, so I guess council actively runs a very long list of capital works for prioritisation. So in terms of the adopted budget, I guess there were no projects for McPhail Street on there, so no, it's not funded. However, every year we do prioritise that, and out of those particular workshops, something that Councillor Fredman raised, which is the road plan, which underpins the prioritisation. That is a workshop that we intend to bring to councillors shortly to give you further background on how we prioritise these capital investments. So,
So back in February, the works outstanding for the above areas, those two streets and a court, will be scheduled for repair over the next 4 to 6 weeks. So
that's related to your stormwater inlet damage. If I can remember your query correctly, there were some issues with the stormwater inlets themselves needing maintenance work. So this is separate. This is larger.
3 pits?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. This is larger capital funding. So that would be, isolated concrete repairs to patch out a bit of curb or.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? We have a recommendation there before us for someone to move. Councillor Fredman, someone to second. Councillor Stewart, Councillor Fredman speak.
Mr Mayor, we've only got a certain size bucket of money. It's critical, in my opinion, that we engage staff to use the dreaded word prioritise works, but the trendy modern term for it is triage the works. We must have professional people giving advice on which jobs realistically are more important. Much as we love petitioners, we can't afford to agree with petitioners that they get a higher priority than jobs that our professional people advise us are more important. So here we have a case. Yes, we could do the work. Yes, it may well happen in the future. No, it's triaged pretty low in the scheme of things, and we have to be quite strict because we've only got a certain size bucket of money.
Councillor Stewart.
Mr Mayor, what I find most pleasing about this is that previous term of council we had quite a lot of petitions and they just seemed to go into blank space. So I know that someone, I think it might have been me, moved a motion that we actually get reports back on petitions. So it's good to see we're getting a report back on a petition and what the progress is. So I'd like to thank staff for that.
2 speakers for the recommendation, 2 speakers against.
Oh, of course.
Sorry?
Against, yeah.
Against?
Yes.
Against noting the report?
Well, I suppose I have to note the report, but I have to say it's beholden to me as being the local member I don't know the priorities that are better than this. I just assume that people's houses flooding might have been a priority. But so sort of thanks for nothing, but I am noting the report. And
point of order, Mr Mayor, there's been no suggestion houses flood. Is that correct?
It goes, well, not into the houses, but...
No, in the yards.
Yeah.
That's quite different to houses flooding, Mr Mayor.
Still devalues the property.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Devereux.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you for bringing this in and for the work. I've noticed a lot of work being done around town. It's fantastic to see. I've noticed a lot of places I've put in for people. If I drive back around, I can see the work's been done. It's really satisfying from an elected member's point of view, but great for the community to know that this stuff's being done. So hats off to the team. On the same sort of thing about the petitions, I would like to just mention the council used to have someone that used to go around and check out all the roads and all the rest of it as their job. That was a fair while ago, and I have heard the name, but I've forgotten it. I would just like to encourage the community, when they see something wrong, to take a photo and send it into council with an email, and just say what the problem is, because council relies on that. It's the eyes and the ears of the community, of the council organisation. So it's not actually a complaint. They shouldn't see it as a complaint. They're helping the organisation to know where the problems are, and then they can prioritise it. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to mention that. And thanks for your work.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Fredman to close.
Mr Mayor, I support the staff report and recommendation. It is hard, but there's a reality here that we can only afford to do certain works, and we do have to rely on our professional staff to select them. We do discuss them at our budget meeting for the annual capital works program, and let's just say it'd be nice to fix everything all of the time, but hey, it ain't going to happen.
With that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. I've just got a brief report on the ALGA conference. Attended the ALGA conference in Canberra, and as I said earlier today, I feel that it was a little bit too long, and particularly in relation to the resolutions or motions that they debate. I believe there should be a change in the principle around those motions, that they only debate motions that affect the broad majority of local government entities, rather than motions that are specific to a particular area. I found it in discussions with a number of councillors present that the list of motions, I think, was at 131 or something. and just seems to go on forever, but doesn't really encapsulate a national level of local government. It seems to be focused on ideologies of individual areas. As I've said earlier in relation to the other recommendation, I think there could be a view taken by the organisers to change the format so it changes every year, or focus on different what in the display, what's the word? Exhibitors, that's it, correct, yeah. Because you often see the same exhibitors year after year peddling the same wares, and I think these conferences are sort of a bit like, say, music festivals or maybe the mustering. You've got to go once to see it, but after that, it's sort of same bat time, same bat channel. So the benefits of them are the contact you have, or the contact I have with other mayors. It's good to have those conversations, and particularly those that are in the disaster space, and understanding what they do around other states, and how they were impacted, and what options have been presented by different levels of government. But in general, these events don't fit my personality, and I go because it's part of my responsibilities, and I'm happy to go as part of my responsibilities. But I think they could actually curtail them by probably a day or so if they actually focused them more on what was relevant at a national level. Councillor Devereux?
Mayor, can you speak to some motions which you think relate more specifically to our region, that you thought, that's something that, if that gets up, that's...
Oh, look, there were recommendations on transportation and other things like that, which, again, they might be suited to Queensland, but maybe that's more specific to the LGAQ conference. And, there were, I've been at, I don't know whether it was this year or the year before, where there was a recommendation on, Yarra Valley Council artwork. I don't know how that has a national perspective to local government. I think they're the areas where you could actually, flick them out and thin the list, and actually have some debate or proper debate on the recommendations that matter, because not this year, the year before, they didn't get through all the recommendations simply because the number was too great, and I think a thinning process would be good. Transportation and energy and all those things that relate to every local government, I think it would be good to have, and even maybe change the structure. So instead of having presentations on those matters, have presentations followed by motions of debate after the presentation. So the information is fresh in your mind and it's relevant to the motions that you're wanting to debate, rather than having the presentations, in one chunk and then rolling it at the back of the conference to a whole lot of motions that are debated. But obviously, I don't organise these events, but hopefully someone picks it up and thinks that there might be a way to change it a better.
I think I saw a motion there about financing, trying to get some more finance from the government, like a set percentage. Was that FAGs?
In terms of FAGs, yeah, that's been on the cards for a while, and that is another, that's something that affects every local government, moving it back up to 1% rather than 0.5%. I think there's a bigger picture when it comes to FAGs, but also with the whole grants program of state and federal governments. It's such a burden on councils probably outside the southeast corner, or those councils that are in a similar size to us, in that, and it's even a bigger burden on smaller councils. You are required to expend a considerable amount of funding to develop the applications and the documentation associated with the applications, in the hope that you go into basically a raffle to see whether or not you're successful. And you may try through that grant funding process for a number of years, at which point that document is sort of a bit old and obsolete and has to be revamped again. I'd like to see governments at both levels consider a model similar to FAGS, where let's, how much funding is being put out there in grants and what's it for? If it's for water and sewage or for sporting amenities, break that up on a formula basis that maybe is based around, population and area, so that there is some sort of fairness to it, and then give that to local government annually. But with the proviso that we don't come back cap in hand for anything else, and that we can acquit that funding either by putting it into constrained funds, so you could save it for a number of years if you want to put together a bit of a kitty for a large project, or if you've expended it annually, But at least then we can plan how we want to spend that money. There is an impetus then for local governments to maintain and upgrade their facilities, rather than the circumstances we find ourselves faced with, where there's been a number of years that have passed where there hasn't been that focus. But if it was for water and sewage, upgrades or maintenance, and whatever it was, rather than have us spend 50 or 100 grand putting documents together, allow us to use that funding for things that matter on the ground, but also know and plan the future with grant funding being allocated on a consistent annual basis.
I suppose the problem there is that by making it a grant fund you've got to apply for and stuff, they get to go, look at us, we're giving this big wad of money to...
Well, we can promise a photo opportunity every time that that we do something with that funding. I just see it as a very inefficient means to allocate funding. You have not only the costs associated with our end, but at the state and the federal end, there's a double cost in that there's got to be staff and people and officers and cars to manage this process. Well, how many millions is that? Is that better, being given to local government at the coalface on an annual basis so that they can plan and deliver the community needs? And wouldn't that be a far more efficient way of doing it than, taking money in, tax dollars in, putting it through a very inefficient system, which is a taxation system, then putting it through another inefficient system, the grant system, and at the end of that, you get this little bit at the end. I think I'd love to see that sort of thing put in place. And even if the government said that's your money, that's what you're going to get annually, don't ever come and ask us for any more because you've had your annual funding there. At least we could plan for that, and we would know what was coming, rather than hoping on a wing and a prayer that you might get some grant funding to do some work.
Any other motions that you thought were good for our region? Look, it's a little while back now. There were just a lot of the recommendations are general, and at Alka I found they didn't really. There was a lot on green energy. And that sort of stuff, and that then creates ideological discussions. There is a big push from the federal zone to have more in that space, but generally I find the motions there, could probably be cut down to a tenth if they were focused on matters that actually affected local government across the board, and therefore cut the conference back by a day. Thank you.
Well, councillors, staff, members of the gallery, that concludes our meeting for today. Thank you for your attendance and assistance. We will, our next meeting will be the workshop, middle of September. Thank you.
Thank you.
Where's my beer?
I promise.